kick off with Spec-Driven Development with Jason Goecke. Jason, I've known since, all the way back to Troppo. Now, Troppo were the friendly, the nice Twilio. Unfortunately, the evil Twilio took a load of money and outspent them. Cisco bought Troppo, but that's all history.
Yes.
But just to say, yeah, great respect for Jason. Built some great companies. And as I said in the title, he's a coding CEO. So he's been CEO of several companies and he knows how to code. So over to you, Jason.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, my background has been coding my entire career, way back, even in high school. My after school job was coding. And it's amazing to see now how much you can do, how quickly. And what I've really been focused on is how do you do this to create product at scale rather than usable apps that are not meant to be scaled, right? And we'll go more into detail on that. So let me share my presentation. And of course, there we go. Oh, you know what? Zoom's not set up for sharing, so it's probably going to make me rejoin. Sorry.
Oh, no
Right back.
problem.
I will be right back. You can entertain.
Okay. Absolutely. That's no problem. That's the big change that's happened. I've noticed people used to always have Zoom on and were presenting on Zoom regularly. And here's a prime example why I'm amazed Zoom is generating the results it is, given how few people have the app installed now. I mean, it's, Google Meet clearly is the preferred option. So, I mean, I still, because of history, use Zoom because it just works globally. So it doesn't matter whether you're in Africa, Asia, or Europe. Or here you go. Jason's coming back on, and hopefully he's able to join us. There you go.
Yes, great. Apologies for that. This is a fresh laptop, not because it's a new laptop, but it came back from the Genius Bar with its logic replaced.
Oh, right.
I have all the the apps I'm expecting to be installed on here. So
Gotcha.
I have to set up settings. Okay, now let me share my screen.
Yay, there you go.
Yep.
We can see the presentation.
Great. And then I'll go into present mode. All right. And I'm going to be focusing on a particular tool, but this isn't the only tool. And in fact, I'll talk about an alternative tool towards the end. So this is about the conceptual idea of spec-driven development, but as a solid example of a particular tool that I've been using in success. And one of the things I want to say is I'm a practitioner. I've actually trained on this several times. I'm using this myself. I'm using this with development teams. So I can give you real world outputs in terms of the success of this. And it's just been astounding to me how it's allowed me to quickly scale up teams and bring new members on and things like that. So vibe coding is where all of this started, right? That's probably 2 years ago now, maybe even a little bit more. Yeah. And the issue with vibe coding is you're really leaving it to the LLM to decide how to write your code. And the LLMs are good at doing that, but they're not good at reasoning about how do you structure it in a way that I can go and deploy and scale, make it testable, right, unit tests, things like this. And that's where spec-driven development comes in. It really defines everything you need to do effective product development, not just write a piece of code. And where this comes in is just like with a human team. I've worked with many human teams, right, on this. And you have to start with culture. You have to start with what are your practices. You have to start with some failures. When I joined Intel, my team, I had to fail 5 sprints before they finally realized I was serious about test-driven development, automation, and things like that, right? So even with teams, you have to do this, right? So this is really doing it with your AI agents. And this allows you to scale this to a point where I have 3 developers right now on a particular project I'm working on called Trezik, which is working on the vCon standard, or building upon the vCon standard, which we all know. I think Thomas Howe is here. Yeah. And we have 3 developers, and I literally see output about 10 times each. So it's like I have a team of 30 developers in terms of the output, and I'm not exaggerating, right? So to me, this is absolutely key and fundamental in any development that you're doing, where it's not just kind of a throwaway app or something for your line of business, something like that. And spec-driven development, when I bring this up with, graybeards like me, a lot of times they hear waterfall and then they just allergic reaction. They don't get past it. There's a mental block, but it has nothing to do with waterfall. It has to do with the spec is just as dynamic and agile as the code is. But what becomes more important is your spec and your intent of your product becomes the most important piece. There's actually a developer out there, Chad Fowler, who coined the idea of the Phoenix architecture, which is this idea of if you built something 2 decades ago, right? You didn't use the state of the art at the time, and now you're having to maintain this code base. You can actually go in and evaluate that code base, come up with a spec, and redevelop it in modern ways, and just throw away that code.
Yeah,
and that's where a spec comes in. What you're doing there. So it's the business rules, the business intent that you want. It's not about technology on the spec. Underlying that, you have your constitution, and these are the principles that guide the AI agents and your team as well. These are things like we do test-driven development. We do API first as a first-class piece. We structure the code in a certain way. It's all of these pieces. We'll go into more detail there. And then AI executes the intent. No one on my team now, or any of my teams, is actually writing code, right? They're monitoring it. You have to know how to code to understand what the input should be, the output should be, what you're doing work. So it's still an important skill, but you're able to raise up to more strategic thinking, and you're essentially always an engineering manager leading a team of AI agents. And you have to think about it in that context because they need just as much hand-holding and shepherding as a human team. But it allows you as a developer to be more focused on the strategic aspect of what you're doing. And then given where Claude Code is, I'm a Claude Code user, and I'm very opinionated there, especially when they came out with agent teams in 4.6 of Opus, that this allows for real parallelism. There's times I've got 5 different Claude codes orchestrating together, coding away, rather than just one serial context. So we touched a bit upon the constitution. We'll go into more detail. The specify. Then you have a clarify step, and that clarify step goes and reasons about your requirements and surfaces ambiguities to clarify those. It's very useful. It's a little bit like a sprint planning session where you need to have the product owner there answering questions to the development team to clarify ambiguities that always come out, even in the AI world. So this is very much modeled on agile and Scrum type work as well. Mm-hmm. Then you have the plan, and this is the first time you really start talking about technology. This is where you'd say, hey, I want it to be Go. I want it to be isolated front end from back end. I want it to be based on Postgres or MongoDB. It will do that for you because it'll go out and do research and actually document the research it does. So you can literally just say plan, and it will decide what's best for this and then ask you to confirm and the like, or you can direct it as well. That's the beauty of it. You can say at a high level or go very deep. And then you have tasks, and this is where it breaks it down essentially into user stories, right? And you can actually have this because when you're still working with a product ownership team and an engineering team, this can also populate a Jira or a GitHub issues on a task basis. And then as you complete those, it'll update as well. So you still have that human interface and traditional tools that you can use within this as well. I'm using Jira just because the team wanted to use Jira. I'm not a big fan. It's a little too complicated, but so don't judge me. And then the real magic happens at the implement. This is where it does the work, right? And things have come a long ways from a long running agent was, considered an hour not that long ago. Now it's 7 hours, and even people have gotten them up to weeks. Yeah. And I've gotten to the point where I trust the process because I've used it enough that I actually just allow it to execute itself. So I'll go to bed at night and wake up in the morning and everything's done and works, right? But you can also have it not do that and guide it more step by step until you build confidence in your process and what you're doing. Installation, I'll be sharing this through Alan in the follow-up on the recording.
Yep.
So it's really how to install it. We won't go into detail here. And then the 6 commands. And this is where it gets important. To me, the constitution is probably the most important part. It will auto-generate one for you, but I'm very opinionated because this is effectively culture of your AI agents in many ways. And it also surfaces to your human teams and how they need to think and interact and work with the systems. So examples here are you simply have what you do is you bootstrap a project with the spec kit command line. You say init or specify init dot and it bootstraps it. And what it's doing is it's installing all of the spec kit workflows and commands, and it can install in one of, I think, 10 different agents, whether it be Cursor, Windsurf, or Cloud Code like I use. And what it does is it creates the commands that then are inside the context of that agent. So you type /spec-kit constitution, and it will walk you through the process of auto-generating or saying, hey, give me opinions of what you want to do, and it's a conversation. And a key thing for me is, even in the AI world, test-driven development, right? I've been a coder. I cheated all the time, where I write the code first and then the test. And the problem with that is you tend to write the test to pass the code, and that misses the whole point, and you end up introducing bugs. It's the same in AI. So I make it write all the tests first, watch them fail, do the implementation, and until they turn green. And that just creates the same kind of discipline and code quality. And then that resilience, as you bring in more agents, you bring in more people, you've got surety that the underlying piece are doing. That's the same for integration testing, end-to-end testing, using Playwright, things like this. And then I have to tell it, do complete implementations. Because even with spec-driven development, I was finding an agent would say it's done, and yet it was just scaffolded. It was like, method signatures not implemented. And just because, people will do that too, right? And they're trained on human behavior.
Yeah.
Whatever minimum test coverage you want. So everything I'm doing is 80% plus. There's a diminishing return if you go too far, because one of the things about this is it is copious in terms of token, because you're doing more reasoning, because there's going to be more token usage.
Yeah.
And if there's a diminishing return, why spend that extra reasoning time doing that? And then things like, TypeScript with strict mode, RESTful APIs by design, right? And these are not as flushed out as I would normally do, because it looks more like this. And you can use positive commands as well as negative, things you shouldn't ever do as well with the agent. And then what happens is, in the context window, these have progressive disclosure, just like Anthropic skills, where it only loads the context it needs and the files it needs for that particular task that it's doing. So it's not like it's loading all these files at once into your context window, but it does have that progressive disclosure.
Gotcha.
Another reason I like Cloud Code is because with 4.6, it has a 1 million token context window, which is pretty healthy compared to the 200K it was before. But you can see here, it can flush this out. You can actually draw this from, if you wanted to, a wiki page. Even it doesn't have to be a markdown file, but these are all markdown because that's kind of the lingua franca of that. But this markdown file could say, hey, fetch this content from a wiki that we can all collaborate on, and it gets fed in real time, right? So just depends on the capability of your coding agent, but most of them now can go and fetch external work. And then you have specify. And like I said, this is really where the business intent comes in. And the beauty of all of these processes, they're all markdown files. They're all stored in the project. So you have all the documentation and context you need for anyone to pick up in there. And what I have found is it creates a very resilient team. Last night, so I had one of the third developer start yesterday. The team has been working for 3 weeks. I let them do the peer onboarding the first day, got on the phone with them their morning last night. It was 10 p.m. my time, I think 9 in the morning for them. And she had already gotten the full system up and running. She had her full development stack running, and she'd already committed her first bug fix.
Cool. And
I was on the phone with them yesterday, and it was like she was already running part of the team, and she was doing features today, right? So it really, the brain of the project's now built into the project. So bringing on new developers isn't hard. And if a developer leaves, it's not the same issue, because it's effectively all the tribal knowledge is now institutional knowledge. You want to keep good developers. It's not that you want them to be replaceable per se, but you're not as susceptible to team churn as you might be in the past if you're using this kind of thing. And since I'm doing things with data, compliance is big, and I bake compliance into everything I do. And this is a great way to be able to say, hey, to your auditor, look, you can see exactly how I developed everything, the decisions I made, why, what's in the code, and reason about that through this with an AI agent as well. So it's powerful in terms of going and getting compliance for ISO 27001,
yeah.
GDPR, is it CCSA, right? All these different things you need to be able to HIPAA.
Yeah.
So everything I'm doing, I just put into my constitution. It needs to be compliant. And then that populates up through everything and then gets documented in each of these steps, what it's doing to achieve that. So highly auditable. I haven't been audited yet. right? I'll let you know how that goes, but I suspect it'll go better, right? So this is it goes through and creates your features, the underlying what it is. And I like Anthropic over OpenAI because Anthropic gets the idea that if you treat your agent in a human way, you're going to get better results. That's why the why is important as well. Normally you just, when I started with AI coding, I just say what I needed.
Yep.
I wouldn't give it the why. But just like with teams, it dawned on me, I would have them read start with why, and we'd start with the why, and then trickle everything down from there. And just like with humans, doing it with your AI team has a big impact. And Anthropic just has the better underlying mechanisms for that. And that's why OpenClaw, which I know one of the core maintainers, Jonathan Taylor, you'd be surprised about that, Alan, but he is.
Oh yeah, no, I saw.
Yeah, and they use Anthropic because they see the best personality arise out of Anthropic, versus OpenAI is just kind of sits in a corner and just gives you what you need, versus real personality. And that's because Anthropic has a constitution itself, and they've actually published that and what their thoughts are there. Just like OpenClaw has a soul MD that learns, adapts for you as well. So just have to think in that mindset as you're developing your spec, just like you'd have to explain to a human team why, what, how, and then it all percolates out from there.
Yeah.
This is to clarify, right? This is where if you didn't catch everything in your spec in that stage, it will go through and reason about that and surface what the ambiguity is and give you 3 or 4 options, or let you choose, make your own option as well. So it's just like, a sprint planning session where you decide how you're going to slice, how you're going to plan that feature or that user story. It's really the exact same, and a very important step, because it's rare that I don't have an ambiguity once I've done my spec, right? In terms of something I haven't thought of. And then the plan step. And the plan step is really where you get technical. And so I think everything from the spec, the constitution, the spec, and the plan, no, not the plan, sorry, let me go back now, I'm forgetting to clarify, is something a product owner can do. You don't have to be technical to do those things at all.
Yeah.
So in my team, the product owners get to this point, and then the engineers take over on the next steps to decide what the architectural thing should be. And it's not that they have to go, I have them go and read the spec because it's good for them to have done so. But at the same time, they can just ask questions about the spec and interact with the spec because they're sitting in a coding agent and reason about what's there on top of doing the architectural plan. And the beauty of this is it does also plan in a way that tries to separate tasks and be parallelized as well. Right? Which is what you do with slicing and things in a sprint planning meeting. You're really going and saying, hey, I want to make sure I can work on this simultaneously, discreetly, both between different humans and different agents within that. It also builds in the security considerations, performance requirements. And like I said, it can reason about all this for you. It'll tend probably, if it's a web app, it's probably going to choose TypeScript, even though I don't necessarily agree with that. I do go on the back end, TypeScript on the front end with Next.js. But then it goes through and researches everything. Even if you've made assumptions for it, it's still going to research why is that a good option or not, and tell you maybe it's not a good option for that. And that all gets documented. So now your technical choices are part of your audit trail. And anyone can go and say, why did we make this choice? Ask the code and the spec, and it'll give you the exact reasoning of that. Imagine if you had that with human teams. That's something that's impossible with human teams, is to document the brain state as they're thinking about architecture and things like this. That happens here.
Cool.
Right? And this is areas where your data models and migrations can be happening while your API routes are happening, and your business logic and your tests, they can all be parallelized and done at once. And that's why I'm saying the output I'm getting from my team is really 10x. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but it really isn't, because each of them are using multiple agents to do this. One of the things I've found that is a pet peeve of mine with AI agents is they'll estimate time for you that it takes to do something, but it's on human terms. It'll say, oh, phase 1 is a week, phase 2 is 3 days, right? Excuse me. Then I go and I start and I'm done in 10 minutes, right? So because they're trained on human scale things, right? They still don't understand that they're capable of doing things much faster inside of a framework like this. So I tend to ignore those. I got to take a drink here.
No worries.
You really accelerate things, and this is a key pattern for that to happen. And then the tasks, right? And this is, now I've got a tickle in my throat. This is where it breaks everything down into discrete work chunks that can then be parallelized and assigned to different agents. Hopefully this goes away. So it does things like, create the data user model, all the different pieces under that, implement the password hashing, et cetera. And like I said, these can go into GitHub issues on the back end. When you say SpecKit tasks, say, hey, each task should be a GitHub issue. Or in Jira, you could say, hey, for the overall spec, create an epic, and then subtasks under that as well. And that's where I still do that, even though you could just ask the code and where it's at and what it's doing and things like that. But it's still, putting things back into the human context, what they're used to, and it creates more confidence in the process because you can actually see it happening, see what's being closed, who's working on it, because I still assign these tickets to myself, but it will say, hey, done by Claude, managed by Jason, things like that. So you still have the audit trail as well. Now, one of the things that's interesting about this, and I'm still trying to figure out this with my team and the audit team that we're working with, is we're doing pull requests at such a speed. Human review of each one, which is traditionally needed to be ISO 27001 and things like this, just no longer makes sense. So we're exploring different ways that as you do a pull request, what level of automated review, maybe it's another model and another agent that does a code review or code rabbit or something like that. Will that suffice in an audit that you're going to be, compliant? And I think the answer will be yes, but there's new ground being led there. So right now we are doing human PR requests until we figure that out. But we're doing, 100 pull requests a day, so it's a little absurd.
Yeah.
But when all the agents are coding, that's what they're doing, is going and looking at the pull requests and approving them. So, and then comes the SpecIt implement, and this is where the agents take off. And if you started something like Claude Code, where I think it's like dangerously don't approve and it auto does its thing, and I'm now doing that. It's hands-free. It really just cranks through it, right? And I'll watch it, and I see it telling me it's writing my tests, right? It's doing the minimum code to get them to pass, and then refactoring and completing when done. So what this means is you're getting away from AI without guardrails like this and instructions like this. While it writes code that works, it's probably not the best code, right? And if you want to come and pick up a vibe-coded project, you're going to spend more time fixing that code so you can even understand it to do that. This does it in a way that creates a discipline that you're writing well-structured code, well-reasoned code, just like a human needs to write good code.
Yeah.
And this is where I really, got AI to perform with me in ways that I had never done before, is building in the test-driven development. And I can tell you, almost every human team that I've come to wasn't doing unit testing properly, right? Even if they were doing TDD, they were doing it like I used to do, which is you write the code first and then the test. Or they're not doing it at all, and they're just using, human user acceptance testing to cheat.
Gotcha.
So you just have to do this with your agents as well. And that's part of what spec-driven development enables.
Cool.
Now, I want to bring up another tool quickly. This is one I'm actually working on with Jonathan Taylor, which is another development project, and it's open source. It's MIT, which is, it provides a lot more latitude and less opinion than even though it's very opinionated as well, than spec-driven development. Mm-hmm. And this will actually, if you look at it, has multiple SDD strategies available. It actually will give you SpecKit as well, but it gives you the ability to say, hey, I want kind of this flavor of spec-driven development through to the more rigid. And the reason you do that is if you go a little bit less on that spectrum, you're going to be even faster and probably less token usage. As you get more to what I just showed you, spec-driven development, it's going to use more tokens because it's doing a lot more reasoning. It's loading a lot more into your context, right? So it gives you more latitude in that spectrum of how rigid do you want to be, right? And right now I'm being more rigid because as the LLMs get better, maybe I won't have to be as rigid, right? But right now I feel if I'm going to have confidence, I'm going to run this in production and put a stamp that, this doesn't have bugs, this is going to run and scale. I want the more rigid in the spec kit side of things. But Deft it's a little early. That's why I didn't go through the Deft process, because we're still working on that. But it's coming on fast because we're using AI to develop it and being very opinionated in what we're doing. So I think it's a place to look out for in the coming days and weeks.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not going to go into the Claude Code deep dive. I'd rather get in the console and show you this at work. And what kind of app should we develop? Should it be, hang on, I'm going to stop the share here. Here we go. I got to open another window just a moment.
No problem.
I share with a clean context. So any questions so far or comments? Let me just take a quick break here.
Yeah.
To the example.
Any questions from the audience?
All right.
Go for it.
Jason, this is Tom. So, hey, so again, we live parallel lives. And I'm finding a lot about same place you're at. And one of the things I'd like to ask you a question about is I'm also finding that having an architecture that is existing above the kind of pieces I'm making really helped me to contain the slop and the sprawl. Do you see that as well?
Say that one more time. I want to make sure I understand.
Yeah, so for instance, as I'm building out the architecture, I'll explicitly do the components outside of the vibe coding itself, and then put them in those boxes. That way, I can control exactly what the contracts are between the elements. Do you see that?
Oh yeah, definitely. I use Claude itself to create the initial spec for the spec. Right, which is because I have to reason what I really want, and I want to be as solid as I can. I'm not doing a 3-sentence prompt. I'm giving it what I think should be the spec, and then the specify part then goes through and takes that spec and turns that into what it needs to go and execute on. So absolutely, there's a whole pre-planning stage. I encourage all the product owners to do it and bring in well-reasoned, well-thought ideas, because it's only going to do as good as you tell it. Right. Just like if you give a human team a 3-sentence prompt and say, go build this product, you're probably not going to get a very good product.
Yeah. That's right. Robots and people both hallucinate.
Exactly.
Cool.
Yeah.
Samantha, you've raised your hand. Do you have a question? Oh, you're on mute.
Right. I will bring up the example here. And just to keep this simple, let's say, can you see my terminal window now?
Yep.
Okay. So one of the things I do is I actually use, hang on here, it's screwing me up with the zoom box around it. Now you can't really see what I'm typing.
Yeah.
Can you see what I'm typing? I can't see what I'm typing, but can you see? There's a little overlay of a zoom tool on it. So I actually use work.dev as my terminal. And the reason I like it is that it's effectively Copilot in your terminal in a way. And I use it for troubleshooting. I use it for doing complex tests where I used to have do a curl post and then watch a log and then watch for the output. This can do all that for me and help me reason about things that are happening without being in the container of a Claude Code. You can do this in Claude Code as well, of course, but I find having the ability to get at the terminal immediately, which you can't really do in Claude Code, it has to be filtered through Claude Code, is very useful. I've been in situations where I've got a lot of network issues, I've got things happening, it's kind of a high pressure environment. This just slices through all of that, but that's a site, that's a rabbit hole. So the way I start Claude, hang on, Claude, I need to type it right. See, I can't see what I'm typing. Right. And let me do this. Hang on. Because it's bringing up an existing context is the problem. I thought I had this all set up properly, but, maybe I just start from fresh. There we go. So this brings up Claude Code. And the reason I have a script that I run is because it automatically puts it into the mode I need with tmux to take advantage of the agent team that's new in Opus 4.6, as well as it says, hey, I want to let it just run, right?
Mhm.
So that's a flag that you put on there. So it's a shortcut for me there. So you can just get started here. Even though I'm going to lie to what I just told Thomas, I'm just going to give it a simple prompt for expediency's purposes rather than go and do all the reasoning. And let's just say, let's create a Mac OS. No, let's create, see, I have this tendency. I still get technical at the point I shouldn't be. That's one of my weaknesses. Let's create a calculator application. Right, it's going to go through and think about this. It's going to, I don't know why I said it. Oh, okay, it thought it was looking for it as a skill rather than a command. So it figured that out. It's now executing the command that's in that bootstrap.specify. Right now, it's going to ask me, okay, what type of calculator application, right? We're going to just say we'll do a web app. That way I can show it without worrying about, we'll do a programmer one, right? And this is actually, okay, it's not doing what it should be doing. Hang on, this is Claude planning. You know, what I find with Claude in any language or any LLM is some days it's off its game.
Yeah.
It's almost like lunar cycle every 2 to 3 weeks, a day where it's not doing what it should be doing. And see, it's not understanding that there's a, oh, you know why? Here's why. It's my fault. Here I'm blaming the LLM and it's human. I forgot the bootstrap.
Yeah. We went through this with Rod.
Oh my God.
Sorry, at the last session we did on AI coding. So don't worry, you're repeating the same errors.
Oh yeah. Well, when you're coding in front of an audience, it's always
always happens. Yep.
a bit harder, right?
But I've seen you do that.
Yep.
Presentations where you were coding just before the presentation.
Yep. Oh yeah. No, I'm a glutton for punishment. I would live code all the time. And here, okay, hang on, because I'm going to do it quickly over here. Specify just so we don't watch me fumble around. You know what? Because this is a rebuilt laptop, I have to go reinstall. Okay. On this one, this is nuts. But it's very quick, so don't worry.
Oh yeah, don't worry. Yeah.
I've done it enough times now. I could do it in my sleep, I think. All right, downloading, doing. At least I have fiber here at home, so it's fast.
Oh yeah.
Well, I think Rob also had the wrestling match with the robot.
I was blaming, right, and I shouldn't. Okay. Maker calc.
Now, Thomas, is it a humidifier you got in front of you, or is it basically?
Oh, no, it's
Oh, okay.
you know, I was born in '67, so I write code better when there's incense. So summer of love thing.
Yeah. Cool.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to another project. Dropbox. And then just a moment. Sorry about this.
No worries.
I thought I had it all ready before I got on the holiday. Okay. All right, here we go. Right.
There you go. Yeah.
Now I'm in a context that's bootstrapped, ready to go. I don't have to blame the agent for being dumb today. That was me. Now I can go spec kit, specify, build a calculator app. Now it knows about that bootstrap file that's in the .specify hidden directory, and it is going to set up a feature branch because this is in an existing project in this case. And I've used this to go and, in fact, I wrote a spec for the conserver as well, right? And I just went into the open source project and said, hey, spec kit specify, tell me about this code base and what the spec would be to generate from that. And then that becomes the baseline where I can now use spec-driven development with that as well. So you can bootstrap this into existing projects, new projects, greenfield projects, things like this, right?
Cool.
You can see it created an 039 calculator app here. So it went out and actually did a git branch, right? So, and I tell it how to name the branches, what our methodology should be. And that's back in the Constitution as well.
Yeah.
And it goes ahead and does that for me. And then we can go and look like this branch did this. And when this pull request comes in, it's associated to the spec and things like this, right? Of course, if I were doing a video cast of this, I'd be speeding up right now the time. I can't control how long it's going to take to do this. Yeah. And there will be some errors in here because it's making sure it's got permissions to your file system, things like this. But now you can see it's starting to create the spec in the background. And you can see it's not asking me anything because I'm running in dangerous mode, which I haven't found to be that dangerous myself. If you're putting Spec-Driven Development in place. In vibe coding, probably not, right? Yeah. So you can see it's now got its spec-md, and that becomes in its own directory that's named after the feature that you're doing. And a feature could be the whole app, right? It doesn't have to be, a singular feature. You can break it down feature by feature if you wanted to, but I tend to start, if I'm starting with a baseline and I'm getting the basic system up and running, I do a very big spec for that because it breaks it down quite nicely. Yeah. Versus once you're, like if I went into the conserver with Thomas Howe, I would, break it down into more chunks now because it's a more mature code base than just getting started. And you have the clarify stage. This is where it goes and looks for the ambiguities. And I'm sure there's going to be some ambiguities here because it was a one sentence prompt, right? That you go ahead and do that. So it's going and reasoning about the code. It's in an existing project, so it may be a little wonky in terms of the questions it asks. But I'm not going to implement this. So, yeah. Right, this is just to show it because for some reason after I installed SpecKit, it didn't want to find it, and I didn't want to wrestle around with my shell environment in front of everybody. And I'm really looking forward to using Deft more as well, because it will do things in ways because it uses ACP on the back end, so you can actually use it as your agent as well, and orchestrate and coordinate agents even outside of Claude Code. And the reason I say that is because different agents can use different LLMs. That you may want to have your unit tests go to a mini model or your unit tests, right, and things like this. So it allows for a spectrum of LLMs in your development process. Will be one of the features. So you can see here, web-based calculator is the most portable. You kind of saw the Claude Plan was doing this. Claude Plan is like a lighter weight spec-driven development. Yeah. So you can see it's reasoning in a similar way, right? So I'm going to say let's do a web application, because it wants to know what type of application. Now it's going and looking, it's going to update that part of the spec with that additional detail, right? And like I said, this isn't, technical. This is still a business intent, even though it sounds a bit technical. It really is like, okay, what kind of application do you want? What context is it going to be in, right? Spec defines basic, right? So you saw what happened in plan. So we're going to say something simple. We'll just do basic here. I feel like we need Jeopardy music. So there, it's updated that scope with those details as well. So you can watch what's happening. And you could have, breakpoints in here that effectively can come and ask you questions, but I'm confident enough in the process that it goes. Right. And now it surfaced all of that in the spec, right? And it tells you what it resolved. It tells you what was clear already. And now you're ready to go to SpecKit plan. So we didn't do the constitution step because that's more involved. I can show you a constitution in detail if people want. But the key points are the specify, the clarify, and now the plan. And the plan is where we say what technical details we want, right? I could say, TypeScript, Node.js, etc. But I'm just going to let it do it in this case. So you can see that thing. I never do that in the real world. In the real world, I'm being more directive. But in the future, maybe I shouldn't be, right? But I had an example. So my side hustle is I do work for NASA, helping them image reentry of spacecraft. And I was in Houston a few weeks ago, we were getting the jets ready with all the imaging equipment and things like that. And they bought this new high-speed camera that nobody knew how to use. And the interface was clearly designed for a studio that wants to capture things in seconds because it does 200,000 frames per second. That user interface was too much of a cognitive load doing that. So I went and researched, to Thomas's point before, it has to, there's an app for it. So there has to be an API. There has to be a way to get at it. Went and did all that research and then wrote an app on the way home that works. And it's effectively a custom streaming app that just captures all frames over a 10-minute period instead of seconds. And for that, I had to use a real-time language. So I use Zig because I can't stop like with Go for garbage collection. So you still have to reason about. That's why I'm saying being a developer and having that experience still helps you get better results. Because if I'd written that Go, at 200,000 frames a second, we probably would have had, frames dropping and things like that.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. And I like Zig. That's what Bun is written in. The replacement for Node and NPM and everything else. It's effectively a drop-in replacement for C, C++, but compatible with all the libraries as well.
Cool. See you, Ted.
So that's just an example of you still have to know what you're doing to get the right results.
Exactly.
You wouldn't do that in Node.js TypeScript, even though you could. Right. And you can see here it went out and it decided Vite 6. It's going to use TypeScript, right? I don't think anyone should use JavaScript anymore if you can avoid it.
Yep.
Static typing is a good thing. Anyways, I'm going to stop this. I think you get the point of the process and how this works and the kinds of results and the fact that it's still human compatible in terms of how it's outputting information and things like that. I don't know if Elon Musk, I saw last week, was saying by the end of the year that the bots will just be writing binary machine code directly and you won't need to know languages anymore. I don't think that's going to happen by the end of the year because he also said the Cybertruck was going to sell like hotcakes. And that right. Exactly. So I'm going to stop it there and kind of open it up for broader discussions, questions, about anything really. It doesn't have to be.
No, that was excellent. Thank you so much, Jason. So, Monteza, do you have any more questions? I know you were wanting to ask earlier. If not, we have Thomas. I can see you're there. Any questions for Jason on what was go for it.
I had one quick comment. Or by the way, Jason, thank you very much. That was very, very good. I enjoyed that. And this is definitely like the next thing, right? This is definitely how it's going to go. So I had seen that Ori Steele had put in a draft in the IETF earlier around a new proposed section for IETF documents called agents. So for agent instructions.
Like Agents MD, right?
Like Agents MD, exactly. Yeah. And I really felt like when we first started VCons that I was a little worried about keeping the libraries in sync. Now it's pretty obvious. You just stick the spec into the robot and go make it work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's actually a key point is that spec-driven development is built on Agents MD. And Agents MD is kind of becoming the standard. Yeah. And that's just a markdown format in a particular style and things like that. And I'd imagine there's probably in that proposal maybe following that standard or not.
Yeah, exactly right. Yep.
But conceptually, it's similar. And what Agents MD does for the rest of the people here is it effectively hints all of your code for agents, gives them context, but at a lower level, like, hey, this method does this, or this particular file does this. And the agents can quickly pick up in a standard way and do that. And I don't know who came out with Agents MD, but these things are becoming de facto standards rather than standard bodies practices. Another one is Skills MD, which Anthropic came out, and it's a great. I use Skills copiously, right? In Anthropic, both with teams and with the agents, because you have the concept of the. Well, let me pull it up here. I've got another presentation. I'm going down a rabbit hole, but I think it's a good rabbit hole.
It's a worthy rabbit hole.
Yes. So let me share this at the time we've got. Because I also go and train my team on how to use skills. So I've got this presentation here that I use for training. Now let's see if I can quickly get to the context that I want to. And I'm happy to share this with people as well. So one of the things about Anthropic skills is, and I bring this up in the context of spec-driven development because it's a standard, and you can give your spec-driven development requirements using these skills as well. So I actually have a skill. I think I've open sourced it for VCon. I have a VCon expert skill that is already consumed and mapped out all the standard specs, things like that. It auto updates, based on the IATF draft, things like that. So every context I have has these multiple skills, and they're essentially like subject matter experts. So I've got a healthcare analysis expert, I've got a document creation expert, a marketing. So these transcend not just coding, but also into business. So my marketing people using this, you've got a brand voice, things like this. But there's another aspect I want to get to. That was just context setting. Let's see, is in here? Is this. This is where the magic really happens inside of Claude. So you have skills which I consider are like your subject matter experts at the office. If you want to talk, if I want to ask about VCons, I'm going to go ask Thomas probably be good choice. But then the sub agents also have skills. And those sub-age have skills like, I'm a very good unit test person. I'm a unit test expert. I'm good at writing Go. So it's kind of like the profile of your individuals that are part of your team that they have. So it meshes these two together where you have the subject matter experts along with the skill set that people normally have. Like, you're going to go and hire a Go developer. You're going to go and hire a TypeScript developer. They're not necessarily a domain expert either. So with this, like I can quickly whip up, a particular CDR from a particular, phone switch manufacturer into coercing the CDR into a VCon standard in all the different ways in about, 60 seconds.
Yeah, cool.
And my developers don't even have to know about it.
Yeah.
They don't have to be experienced in VCons or CDRs or anything else. Because SignalWire, for example, also released a skill for their environment.
Cool. Ian, I see your hand is raised. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I do. Alan, thanks. And thank you, Jason, for sharing all this with us. I'm kind of wondering, we saw a presentation last week on MCP servers, and I'm wondering how spec-driven development might, is it complementary with that approach, or is it meant to kind of replace that approach? What's your thoughts on that?
It's absolutely complementary. So you can, you have MCP servers in scope and configured in your coding agent, and it'll automatically look for those tools and discover them and do it. But I'm not a fan of MCP servers for a myriad of reasons. I try not to use them if I don't have to. So I do OpenClaw stuff, for example. And one of the principles of OpenClaw is it prefers CLIs over MCP servers. They're much more deterministic. The agent can just do, CLI help, and it knows how to use that tool now rather than what you're doing in the MCP context. Right. And you just get much better, quicker output. So like when I'm doing development, I have the Azure command line because I'm doing infrastructure as code with Pulumi. So all my infrastructure is coded in TypeScript, unit testable as well. It's beautiful because I hate the Azure, web app or console. It's way too complicated. And so I've got the Azure command line. I've got the GitHub command line. I've got the Pulumi command line. And if there's an API that doesn't have a command line, I write one, right? Because it's easy to do now. Yeah. And now I've got that command line. And I just find it's quicker, faster, it's more secure than MCP servers are. They've got, issues and things like that. So I think MCPs, and I remember, Thomas, when we were in Amsterdam, someone talking about the IETF possibly picking up the MCP standard. I think it got rejected and now it's part of the Linux Foundation or something like that.
Yeah, I think rejected is maybe too harsh a term.
Yeah,
but I think they chose the Linux Foundation. Yeah, and let me just give the other side of the coin for MCP, because what Jason said was absolutely right. But the assumption there is you're sharing an execution environment, that the interface that you are interfacing with is right with you, and you can do that. And if you're traversing a network where you've got observability or auditability concerns, I think it's a better approach to it, because just like transcripts are a collapse of the conversation. Like you could take a conversation and transcribe it and just analyze that, but what do you lose? You lose consent, you lose timing, you lose emotion. It's a collapsing of it. And I think when you go to standard IO, just in your own place, yeah, it's much more reliable. That's all very, very true. But you've also collapsed the context of it. It doesn't really necessarily give you the observability and the distributedness of what it is. So, yeah.
That's
So
fair.
there's- yeah.
Use case and context, I think to your point, like there is the vcon MCP server, and that's a different context because you're looking at data, you're doing things, it surfaces that in a different way. So there are
Yes, sir.
I'm not completely poo-pooing MCP servers. Just
Indeed, so.
and they're both compatible with Spec-Driven Development.
Yeah, cool thing. Yeah, and by the way, that Beacon MCP server is both standard I/O and
Oh, it is. I didn't notice
it is. Oh yeah,
All right.
no, it is tricky.
So we're aligned.
Absolutely aligned. Again, we live in the same life. Yet again.
I don't have my sweater jacket. I need to go put that on.
I have an extra one. I lost that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm in New England. What am I going to do?
And to JC, I'll make sure we share the slides with you as well. So thank you for that question. Anything else from the audience? This was fun. It was interactive. I think everyone who's been on this has learned a lot. So well done, Jason.
Hopefully I didn't cover too much going back into skills and things like that. That may have been covered on a previous one, but
No. Absolutely. That was great. I think it's provided the context. And again, you were hacking it. Getting the context window up and running and getting the demo working. It's like, yeah.
And that's harder now than the coding part. That's the beauty of it. The codes itself now. Right?
Yes, exactly. And which was the challenge that Rob had, because you just make assumptions. But anyway, again, thank you so much to everyone for your questions. I'll make sure we get all this packaged up and into the vConnect TED Hack article so that you can get access to this great presentation. Again, thank you to everyone, and I'll speak to you soon.
Thank you.